The stars were calm that night, glittering across the endless dark. Admiral Darzo Vauban, commander of the Vrak Dominion's Third Fleet, stood silently before the wide viewport of his flagship. Below him floated a small blue planet, Earth, a world that looked too peaceful to be a threat, too fragile to matter. He had fought 100 wars and crushed a dozen rebellions. Worlds had burned beneath his orders. Civilizations had fallen in silence when his fleet arrived. Darzo was known across the galaxy as the Unbroken Admiral. No enemy had ever outsmarted him. No fleet had ever escaped him. And yet, as he watched the human homeworld spin below, a strange unease stirred in his chest. It was faint, a whisper of instinct, the kind that had kept him alive when others had perished. Humans were not supposed to be dangerous. The Galactic Council called them reckless, emotional, short-lived creatures who had stumbled into space with clumsy machines and wild dreams. When the Vrak Dominion declared war, the Council didn't protest. They believed humanity would fall in weeks. But that was 3 months ago, and the humans had not fallen. Darzo turned to his second-in-command, a tall silver-scaled officer named Tharn. "Report," he said calmly. "Admiral, our scans show minimal orbital defenses. A few old satellites. Their navy is grounded." "No fleet activity detected in this system," Tharn replied. His voice carried confidence, and the same overconfidence Darzo despised. Darzo's eyes narrowed. "Minimal defenses? You said the same over Elithra before they detonated a sun." Tharn hesitated. "Sir, these are humans, not Elithrians. They don't possess that level of—" "Do not assume." Darzo interrupted, his voice low and cold. "Assumptions lose wars. We will send probes first." Tharn looked puzzled but obeyed. He turned to the crew pits and barked orders. Soon, small silver drones shot away from the flagship like streaks of light, racing toward Earth's orbit. Darzo watched them go. Something about the planet below felt wrong. There were no distress signals. No visible military movement. No orbital mines, nothing. It was too quiet. In war, silence was never peace. Silence meant someone was waiting. "Admiral," Tharn said after a few moments. "Probes are transmitting. No signs of resistance so far. Radiation levels normal. City lights are visible across all continents." Darzo frowned. "All continents? Even during wartime?" "Yes, sir." "Strange," Darzo muttered. "If they are losing, why do they still keep their lights burning?" He had seen fear before. On every world he conquered, cities went dark as soon as his fleet arrived. Civilians hid. Governments sent surrender signals. But Earth glowed bright as if daring him to strike. Darzo's claws tapped against the command railing. He could feel the hum of the ship's reactor through the floor. The air smelled of metal and cold oil. Every crew member moved with practiced discipline, confident that victory was near. Only their admiral doubted. "Admiral," Tharn said again, impatience slipping into his tone. "The Council orders immediate orbital bombardment. They want Earth broken before sunrise." Darzo turned sharply. His 4 golden eyes locked on Tharn. "The Council is not here, Commander. I am. And I will not turn this fleet into a target because some politicians are impatient." The bridge fell silent. Even the hum of machinery seemed to fade. Darzo looked back at Earth. Somewhere down there, he imagined humans were staring back, perhaps with fear, perhaps with fury. He could almost feel their gaze, sharp and unyielding. A quiet thought crossed his mind. They're waiting for something. He didn't know how right he was. Far below, hidden deep beneath mountains and oceans, human command bunkers came alive. Monitors flickered. Keys clacked. Launch orders were whispered through secure channels. On radar screens, the massive Vrak fleet hovered like a storm cloud. But humanity had learned to fight storms. In orbit, Darzo's ship trembled slightly as one of the probe signals vanished. Then another. Then a third. "Admiral," Tharn said quickly, "we've lost 3 probes. No explosion detected, no impact trace. They just vanished." Darzo's eyes widened. "Cloaking disruption fields," he whispered. They're masking something. The crew stared at the sensors as small red dots began to appear. Faint at first, then multiplying rapidly. "Multiple signatures incoming," shouted the sensor officer. "Unknown configuration, approaching fast." Darzo's jaw tightened. His instincts screamed, "Shields up. Prepare for evasive." And then the stars lit up. Dozens of ships burst from the black. Human ships, sleek and silent, rising from the shadow of the planet like ghosts. They opened fire without warning, their plasma cannons blazing. The first Vrak cruiser vanished in a storm of light. Darzo's hands gripped the railing as shock rippled through the bridge. "Impossible," Tharn whispered. They were hiding. Under their own planet? Darzo's voice was steady, but his heart pounded. "No," he said quietly. They were waiting. Outside, Earth's sky burned with streaks of blue fire. The beginning of a battle no one had expected. The humans had not only survived, they had planned this. And for the first time in his life, Admiral Darzo Vauban realized. He didn't see it coming. The first explosion rocked the entire bridge. The floor trembled, lights flickered, and alarms screamed across the massive warship. Admiral Darzo Vauban gripped the railing to keep his balance as red warning symbols flooded the command screens. "Report," he barked. "Hit on the forward cruiser. Direct impact." "The Valrath is gone," shouted the comms officer. "We're taking heavy fire, Admiral." Darzo's golden eyes darted across the tactical display. Dozens of red dots, human ships, were swarming from every direction. They weren't massive like Vrak vessels. They were smaller, lighter, and faster. But they moved with terrifying coordination, slipping between the Dominion's heavy cannons like water between rocks. "Those are human ships," Tharn gasped. "They're too organized, too precise." Darzo's voice was cold steel. "Don't underestimate them. Focus fire on their flanks." But it was already too late. Another shockwave tore through the hull. Sparks burst from the ceiling as one of the consoles exploded. A crew member screamed as flames swept across the bridge before being smothered by the emergency field. Outside the viewport, the black sky was alive with light. Human ships darted through the chaos like predators, releasing volleys of plasma and magnetic rounds that sliced through Vrak armor. Each hit was clean, exact, and devastating. Darzo's jaw tightened. "They knew our formation," he said quietly. "They were ready for us before we arrived." Tharn stumbled beside him, clutching his burned arm. "Admiral, how? How could they possibly know? Our hyperspace route was secret." Darzo didn't answer. His mind raced. There was no way the humans could have predicted their arrival unless someone had leaked the data. Or worse, humans had learned to read the Dominion's encrypted signals. He refused to believe that. "Not yet." "Admiral," the sensor officer shouted. "We're detecting orbital platforms rising from the planet's surface, massive heat signatures." Darzo turned toward the window and froze. From the upper atmosphere, new shapes were emerging. Enormous human defense stations, hidden within the planet's magnetic field. They rose slowly, glowing with white-blue energy. Their designs were crude compared to Vrak technology, but their power output was undeniable. One of the stations opened fire. A colossal beam of light tore through the darkness, striking a Vrak destroyer head-on. The ship split in two, its wreckage burning as it fell toward Earth's surface like a dying star. The bridge fell silent for a heartbeat. Even the crew stopped breathing. Then Darzo's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "All ships, defensive pattern Delta 4. Fall back and regroup. Sir, the Council ordered us to destroy their cities." Tharn began, but Darzo silenced him with a glare that could kill. "The Council is not here, Commander." "I am. Obey my orders or I'll have you removed." Tharn lowered his gaze and nodded, ashamed. Darzo turned back to the window. He could feel something shift deep inside him. For years he had fought countless races, crushed entire worlds, but never had he faced an enemy that fought like this. The humans didn't attack out of fear. They didn't retreat. They adapted. Every minute their formations changed. Every volley grew sharper, deadlier, smarter. They were learning in real time. They're fighting like they know us, Darzo whispered, like they've studied our every move. Another blast shook the bridge. The tactical map flickered again. The Dominion fleet, once proud and unbreakable, was now in chaos. Dozens of ships were gone. Others burned silently, drifting helplessly. Darzo's comms crackled with desperate voices. "Admiral, we're losing power. Our engines are down. They're boarding the Virek. We need reinforcements." The humans were boarding Vrak ships. Boarding them. The thought was absurd, yet the proof was there. Alarms blaring from multiple sectors. Humans in armored suits had launched small pods, breaking through hulls to fight hand-to-hand inside the Dominion ships. Darzo clenched his fists. "So that's their game," he muttered. "They don't just want to win. They want us to feel it." The bridge doors opened suddenly, and a young officer stumbled in, blood on his uniform. "Admiral!" "Enemy troops inside the lower decks." Darzo's eyes narrowed. "Inside, how many?" "Hundreds, sir. They're moving fast." "We can't contain them." Darzo's command instincts kicked in. "Seal the lower levels. Vent the airlocks if you must." The officer hesitated. "But sir, our crew—" "Do it!" Darzo roared. His voice carried the weight of 1,000 victories and one growing fear. The young officer nodded and ran off. For a moment, the Admiral stood alone at the center of the chaos. Fire flickered behind him. Screens glowed red. The air was thick with smoke and desperation. He looked once more at the planet below, that small, defiant world, and he understood something that made his chest ache. The humans were not fighting for conquest or glory. They were fighting for home. He had seen many armies break before that kind of fire. Tharn's voice came trembling from behind him. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Darzo straightened his back, his golden eyes burning with both fury and respect. "Retreat to the outer orbit," he said softly. "We regroup, then strike again. But mark my words, Commander, this isn't a victory for them yet." He looked down at Earth one last time and whispered under his breath, "They've drawn blood, but I will know their secret. I will understand how humans fight. Outside, the fires of battle painted the heavens red and gold, and far below, humanity's defenders smiled through tears, knowing that for the first time in galactic history, they had made the unstoppable bleed. Smoke and light danced across Earth's skies like angry spirits. From the ground it looked as if the heavens themselves were burning. Entire cities watched as flaming trails crossed the night. The remains of alien ships breaking apart in the upper atmosphere. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, inside the hidden base known as Fort Titan, the humans were not celebrating. The war had just begun. "Status," shouted Commander Elena Reyes, her voice echoing through the control room. Screens flickered, maps shifted, and operators called out numbers in rapid rhythm. Sweat dripped from faces, but no one slowed down. "Enemy fleet is pulling back," reported one officer. "Their main formation is breaking. We hit 7 of their capital ships." A brief cheer rippled through the command center, but Elena raised her hand. "Don't celebrate yet. They're not done. The Vrak don't retreat to surrender. They retreat to think." Her eyes were tired but fierce. For months she had led the resistance from the shadows, planning, waiting, watching. She had seen entire colonies fall to the Dominion. She had sworn Earth would not follow. "Ma'am," another voice called, "we've confirmed boarding success on multiple ships. Team Phoenix reports heavy resistance, but they've secured control of an enemy destroyer." Elena's lips curved into a hard, proud smile. "Good. Tell them to pull whatever intel they can before those lizards figure it out." Then she turned her gaze to the large holographic display showing the alien fleet retreating beyond Earth's orbit. Her heart pounded. They had done it. Humans had struck back. But the cost was written in every blinking red marker on the board. Hundreds of pilots had died. Dozens of ships were gone. War always demanded payment. "Ma'am," her aide whispered, "should we press the attack?" "They're vulnerable." Elena shook her head slowly. "No, they'll expect that. Let them think we've spent everything. The next time they come, we'll hit harder. Her eyes drifted to the distant stars, where the alien flagship waited, the one they called Vraxion. She didn't know the name of the creature commanding it, but she could feel him out there watching, thinking, just like her. Far above, Admiral Darzo Vauban stood in silence inside the battered command bridge of his ship. The fires had been extinguished. The wounded had been carried away. The smell of burned metal and fear hung thick in the air. He stared at the battlefield map, now littered with black marks, the graves of ships that had served under him for years. His heart was heavy, but his mind was alive. "Status," he said softly. Tharn answered with a trembling voice. "We've lost 32 ships, Admiral. Damage to the flagship's aft section. Shields at 40%. The humans have withdrawn." Darzo's mandibles tightened. "Withdrawn? No, they are regrouping. They fight with patience now." He turned to the viewport where the blue planet shone below like a defiant jewel. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "They learned our strategy faster than we adapted to theirs. That should not be possible." Tharn frowned. "Perhaps it was luck." Darzo looked at him and Tharn quickly lowered his gaze. "Luck?" Darzo repeated, his tone like ice. "You call it luck when a lesser species turns our own tactics against us?" He stepped closer to the glass, watching as fragments of wreckage drifted across the stars. "No, Commander. This was planning. Humans have been preparing for this for a long time." He thought back to the first probe that vanished, to the moment the humans struck, from beneath their planet's shadow, using stealth and timing beyond what the Dominion believed possible. They were supposed to be primitive, but they had caught him blind. He had underestimated their heart, their stubbornness, their rage. A soft tone came from the comms unit. "Admiral," said a nervous technician, "we've captured one of their soldiers. A boarding pod was disabled near the aft deck. The human is still alive." Darzo turned sharply. His voice carried a strange calm. "Alive? Bring them to the interrogation chamber." Minutes later, Darzo stood inside a dimly lit cell. The human soldier sat chained to the wall, helmet removed. He was young, barely more than a boy, his face bruised but proud. His eyes burned with the same fire Darzo had seen in the skies. "You're brave," Darzo said, "but foolish. Your kind has spirit, I'll grant you that." The soldier smiled weakly. "Spirit's all we need." Darzo tilted his head. "You knew we were coming, how?" The human's lips curled into a grin. "We listened. You just didn't notice." Darzo froze. "What do you mean?" "Your ships talk too loud," the soldier said, coughing. "Your codes, your transmissions. We cracked them months ago. We knew your routes, your orders, even your weaknesses. You thought we were hiding." He leaned forward, eyes fierce, but we were watching. For the first time, Darzo felt something he hadn't in centuries, a flicker of shock. The human's gaze was fearless, defiant even in chains. He stepped back slowly. "You're not the prey, are you?" The human laughed softly, blood trickling from his mouth. "No, Admiral. We're the storm." Moments later, his heart stopped. The wounds too deep, the pain too much. Darzo stood there in silence, staring at the lifeless body. Around him, the hum of the ship felt distant, fading into a quiet that chilled him to the core. In that silence, he whispered to himself, "So this is humanity. Clever, reckless, unyielding." He looked back toward Earth through the viewport. For the first time, he didn't see a target. He saw an opponent worthy of fear. The night over Earth was quiet again. The fires in the sky had faded, and the ocean reflected the stars as if nothing had happened. But everyone knew it was only the calm between storms. Inside Fort Titan, Commander Elena Reyes sat alone in the briefing room. A single light glowed above her, throwing shadows across the table covered with maps and data pads. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Her uniform was torn, her hands still trembling from the battle. On the wall screen, the image of the Vrak fleet hovered in orbit, broken but not gone. Her second-in-command, Captain Jonas Lee, entered quietly. He carried 2 cups of cold coffee. "You should rest," he said softly. Elena shook her head. "Not yet. They'll come again." Jonas placed the cup before her and sat down. "They lost almost half their fleet. We made history today. We actually beat them." Elena gave a tired smile. "We survived, Jonas. That's not the same as winning." There was silence for a moment. The hum of machinery and distant radio chatter filled the air. Somewhere far above, satellites relayed the debris patterns of the destroyed alien ships. Jonas leaned forward. "We can still use the wreckage." "Their tech," Elena interrupted, her tone sharper. "We can't rely on stolen scraps. We need to understand them, how they think, how they command." Her voice softened. "That alien admiral, whoever he is, he's not finished. I can feel it." She turned her gaze toward the window, where faint streaks of light still burned across the horizon, the last remains of the battle. Far above, aboard the Vraxian, Admiral Darzo Vabon stood before a table of holographic projections. The blue lights reflected off his scaled face, making his golden eyes glow with intensity. Around him, the senior officers of the Dominion's Third Fleet waited in uneasy silence. 32 ships lost," said Tharn quietly. "Thousands dead. The Council demands to know why you haven't resumed the attack." Darzo's voice was calm but firm. "Because rushing will only multiply our failures." He touched the hologram, enlarging the image of Earth. "This planet is unlike any we've faced. Its people fight with logic and emotion combined. A dangerous mix." A younger officer snorted. "They are savages, Admiral. Their machines are primitive. They only got lucky." Darzo turned his head slowly. "Luck doesn't destroy fleets, Lieutenant." The room fell silent again. He gestured toward the tactical map showing the pattern of the surprise attack. "Look closely. Every move they made was calculated. They knew where we would appear. They predicted our response patterns. They exploited our weaknesses. That is not luck. That is intelligence." Tharn frowned. "Do you believe they have spies among us?" Darzo's eyes darkened. "I believe they have something worse, an understanding." He paused, remembering the human prisoner's final words. "We're the storm." For a moment, he almost admired them. "Sir," Tharn said carefully, "the Council won't wait long. They'll send another fleet if we don't act soon." Darzo nodded slowly. "Let them send it. The more we underestimate humans, the faster we will die." He dismissed the officers with a wave, and the room emptied, until only he remained. He stood before the viewport again, staring down at the blue world below. His reflection stared back at him, a proud admiral now marked by doubt. He whispered, "What drives you, humans? What gives you that fire?" Meanwhile, deep beneath the earth, Elena walked through the long metal corridors of the base. The soldiers she passed stood at attention, tired but proud. Each of them had seen the enemy with their own eyes and lived to tell about it. She stopped in the research chamber, where scientists worked around the clock studying captured alien technology. Dr. Liam Patel, the lead engineer, looked up as she entered. "Commander Reyes!" "You're just in time. We cracked part of their communication system." Elena's eyes widened. "You mean their signal codes?" "Yes," Liam said, excitement shining in his voice. "Their data encryption is complex, but we've managed to translate small fragments. They talk in layered frequencies but get this, Commander." He handed her a data pad. "They're scared," Elena blinked. "What?" "Their fleet logs mention heavy losses, confusion, even fear of another ambush. Their admiral is holding them back." For the first time that day, Elena allowed herself a small, tired laugh. "So even the great lizard general bleeds." Liam smiled faintly. "You hit them hard, Commander. They'll remember this day." Elena's eyes softened. "So will we." She turned to the viewing screen showing Earth from above. Still whole, still shining. "We just have to survive the next one." Back in orbit, Darzo received a new transmission from the Dominion Council. Their voices boomed through the speakers. "Admiral Vabon, One voice thundered. Your hesitation is disgraceful. The humans are insects. You will resume the assault or be replaced. Darzo stood straight, his voice calm but edged with quiet fury. Then replace me if you dare. But if you do, the next fleet will vanish like the last. These humans are not what we believed. There was silence from the council. The signal cut off abruptly. Darzo exhaled slowly and turned to Tharn. Prepare the scouts again. No attacks, just observation. I want every human movement tracked. Tharn hesitated. You mean to study them? Yes, Darzo said. If we cannot destroy them with power, we will learn how they think. Every strategy, every weakness, every emotion. I want to understand the human heart. He looked out at the planet again, his expression unreadable, because only then, he whispered, can I break it? The stars reflected in his eyes like cold fire. The next battle would not just be for survival. It would be a battle of understanding, and neither side knew that soon. The war would change everything. Days turned into nights above Earth, though the stars never changed. The once mighty Vrak fleet now drifted at the edge of the solar system, repairing its wounds. Sparks flickered from damaged hulls, and the silence of space was broken only by the faint hum of engines and the quiet whisper of fear. Admiral Darzo Vabon stood on the observation deck of his flagship, Vraxian. He watched the pale glow of Earth from afar. The humans had hurt him, worse than any enemy before. Not just his fleet, but his pride. He touched the scar across his arm, a wound from the explosion that tore through the bridge days ago. Pain reminded him he was still alive. Admiral, said Tharn, stepping forward cautiously. Repairs are almost complete. The Council has sent new reinforcements. They demand a second strike within 48 hours. Darzo didn't move. His voice came low and calm. They think numbers will win this war, fools, Tharn frowned. Sir, our soldiers are ready. They want revenge. Darzo turned to face him. Revenge without understanding is suicide. We underestimated the humans once. I will not do it again. He looked back toward the glowing planet. They fight differently, Tharn. They fight with something we lost long ago. Tharn hesitated. You speak of emotion, Admiral? Darzo nodded slowly. Yes, emotion. It makes them unpredictable, dangerous. But it also gives them strength. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then Darzo said softly, Bring me all data on their world. Every broadcast, every transmission, every pattern. I want to know how humans think, how they feel, how they hope. On Earth, Commander Elena Reyes stood on the balcony of Fort Titan, watching the sunrise. The light spilled over the horizon, painting the sky orange and gold. It was beautiful, and it hurt. Too many names filled her casualty list. Friends, pilots, people who had given everything for one victory. Captain Jonas Lee stepped beside her, holding a report pad. The debris from orbit is still falling, he said quietly. We've recovered fragments of their tech. Our scientists say we can use some of it. Elena nodded absently. And the civilians? Terrified, Jonas replied. But they believe now. They believe we can fight. Elena's eyes softened. Good. Belief is our weapon now. She leaned on the railing, gazing at the sky. They'll come back, Jonas, you know that, right? He nodded grimly. Yes, ma'am. And next time they'll be ready for us. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. Then we'll have to surprise them again. In orbit, aboard the Vraxian, Darzo studied human broadcasts, music, speeches, news, and images of life on Earth. The sound of human voices filled his chamber. Laughter, cries, songs of sorrow and hope. It was strange to him, but also moving. A clip played on the screen. Children singing beneath a ruined city, their voices small but bright. Darzo stood silently watching. Tharn entered and paused at the sight. Admiral? You're watching their music? Darzo's golden eyes glowed faintly. Listen to them, Tharn. Even in destruction, they create sound. Even in fear, they sing. That is power no weapon can destroy. Tharn shook his head. You sound almost impressed. Darzo turned sharply. I am impressed. Do not mistake respect for weakness. He turned off the screen and faced his commander. The humans will not win by brute force. They will win with spirit. If we wish to defeat them, we must understand that spirit and crush it. Back on Earth, Elena received a new transmission. The image of an old scientist, Dr. Patel, filled her screen. His face was pale with excitement. "Commander, we did it. We cracked their signal relays," he said breathlessly. "We can now listen in on the Vrak command network." Elena's eyes widened. "You mean we can hear their fleet?" "Yes," he said. "Every order, every command, even the voice of their admiral." She felt a chill. "Darzo Vabon." "Exactly," Patel nodded. "He's different from the others." "He's cautious now. He's learning about us," Elena frowned. "Learning?" "Yes," Patel said. "He's studying human culture, our broadcasts, our history, even our music." Elena leaned forward. "He's trying to understand us." Patel nodded. "Maybe to destroy us, or maybe something else." For a long moment she said nothing. Then quietly she murmured, "Then we'll let him learn. But on our terms." In the quiet of space, Darzo stood in his private chamber. He stared at the reflection of Earth in the window. The blue world looked fragile but alive, like a beating heart in the dark. He thought of the humans he had killed, the ones who had fought without fear. The one who had smiled in chains, he whispered, "You fight like you were born from the stars themselves." Tharn entered again, carrying a data chip. "Admiral, this is the latest analysis. The humans are preparing their planetary defenses. Our spies believe they've created a weapon that can pierce shields." Darzo took the chip, his expression unreadable. "So they adapt again." He walked to the console and placed the chip inside. "Then so will we." He turned, his voice low but filled with purpose. "Order the fleet to move closer. Slowly, quietly, let them think we hesitate." "Let them think they have time," Tharn bowed. "Yes, Admiral." When he was gone, Darzo stood alone once more. The silence of space surrounded him. For the first time he wondered, not about victory but about meaning. Why did these humans fight so hard? What drove them to resist a power so vast? He closed his eyes. The answer came softly, like an echo from the stars. Because they have something worth dying for. Darzo opened his eyes again, and his voice was quiet, almost reverent. "Then so be it. The next battle will decide everything." Outside, Earth glowed like a living flame, and the shadows of war began to gather once more. Neither side knew who would strike first, but both knew this time. One of them would not walk away. The sky above Earth darkened again, but this time humanity was ready. Every radar, every orbital scanner, every station in the cold black of space waited in silence. The memory of the first war still burned in their hearts, the fire, the screams, the courage. Humanity had rebuilt, stronger and smarter. Commander Elena Reyes stood inside the new war room, the light of countless holograms glowing across her face. Around her, officers moved quickly, their voices calm but tense. "Admiral Darzo's fleet is moving into high orbit," Captain Jonas Lee reported. "They're not attacking yet. It's like they're watching." Elena's jaw tightened. "He's testing us again, trying to see how we respond." She took a deep breath. "This time we won't wait." The officers exchanged glances. Everyone knew what that meant. They were going to strike first. In the vast dark of space, Admiral Darzo Vabon stood on the bridge of the Vraxian, his golden eyes reflecting Earth's faint blue light. His ships formed a silent ring around the planet. Thousands of lives waited for his command. "Admiral, humans have activated their orbital cannons," said Tharn, his voice sharp. "They are powering up their defense grid." Darzo's expression remained calm. "Of course they are. They know we're here." Tharn frowned. "Orders, sir?" Darzo looked at the glowing world beneath them. "Wait." He felt something strange deep inside, a pull he couldn't explain. These humans, they refused to die quietly. Even now, surrounded and outnumbered, they prepared to fight. Not from pride, not from greed, but from something deeper. "Sir." Tharn said again impatiently. If we delay, they will strike first. Darzo's voice was soft. Let them. On Earth, the tension was unbearable. Elena watched the countdown on her screen. The missiles were ready. The satellites aligned, and the fleet in low orbit was in position. She whispered, For all we lost, for everyone who believed. Then she gave the command, Fire. The silence shattered. Dozens of bright trails shot up from Earth like spears of light. They tore through the sky, crossing the darkness of space, heading straight for the Vrak fleet. Alarms screamed across Darzo's ships. Incoming missiles. Multiple trajectories. Darzo watched them calmly. So it begins. He raised his hand. Activate shields. Deploy interceptors. The first explosion lit up the void, a sunburst in the black. The second followed, then a third. Space became fire and chaos. Humans had changed. Their weapons were stronger, faster, smarter. The first wave destroyed 3 Vrak cruisers before they could react. Tharn shouted, They've improved their targeting systems. We can't track all of them. Darzo's voice remained steady. Adapt. Redirect power to forward shields. Protect the flagship. Outside the window, he saw Earth's defenses blazing like angry stars. For a brief moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in decades, respect mixed with fear. Commander Elena stood firm as her screens filled with data. Target confirmed hits on multiple enemy ships, Jonas reported. But their flagship still stands. Elena clenched her fist. Darzo's alive. He won't run. He'll hit back soon. Her heart pounded. She knew what was coming next. Prepare counter-defense grid, she ordered, and get Dr. Patel's weapon ready. Patel's voice crackled through the comms. Ma'am, it's unstable. The energy core is not fully contained. It could backfire. Elena's eyes didn't waver. If it means saving Earth, we'll take that risk. In space, Darzo's voice cut through the chaos. All ships, prepare counterstrike. Focus on their main launch sites, Tharn nodded. Understood. But before he could give the order, Darzo hesitated. He looked once more at Earth, the fragile blue world glowing amid the darkness. He remembered the human songs he'd heard, the faces of children, the courage in their eyes. For the first time he questioned his purpose. Was victory worth this endless destruction? Sir, Tharn pressed. Your command? Darzo spoke quietly. Hold fire, Tharn froze. Sir, we'll lose our advantage. Darzo turned, his golden eyes fierce. Hold fire! That's an order. The bridge fell silent. None of his crew understood. Darzo said softly, If we destroy them completely, we learn nothing. And if we learn nothing, we are no better than beasts. Back on Earth, Elena stared at her sensors in disbelief. They're not firing back, she whispered. Jonas frowned. What? That doesn't make sense. Why would they stop? Dr. Patel's voice came through again. Commander, maybe he's hesitating. Maybe he's thinking. Elena narrowed her eyes. Or maybe he's planning something. She looked at the massive ship on the screen, the Vraxian shining like a dark god in orbit. Her voice hardened. No matter what, we finish this. Fire the weapon. Darzo's ship sensors flared red. An enormous energy spike came from Earth's surface. He turned sharply. What have they done now? A brilliant beam of white light shot upward, piercing the black. It moved faster than anything his sensors could measure. It wasn't a missile. It was something new, something human. Impact in 5 seconds. Tharn shouted. Darzo looked at the beam racing toward them. For a brief moment he smiled. So this is their true spirit. Then he raised his voice. All power to shields. The beam struck, light swallowed everything. The Vraxian shook violently as alarm screamed. Metal tore apart. Flames erupted. Darzo was thrown to the ground, smoke filling the bridge. His vision blurred, his body burned, but he managed to pull himself up. Damage report, he shouted. Catastrophic. Tharn yelled. Shields down. Hull breached. Through the cracked viewport, Darzo saw the beam fading, and Earth still glowing strong below. He felt his strength leaving him. His hand pressed against the shattered console and he whispered, "They did it. They actually did it." He looked at the planet one last time. "Humans, you are fire in the darkness." Then the bridge lights flickered and the Vraxian drifted, half ruined but not destroyed. The war wasn't over yet, but something inside Darzo Vabon had changed forever. The great ship Vraxian drifted through the silence of space. Wounded and burning, half its hull was gone, its shields shattered, and thousands of crew members were dead or dying. But it still lived. Barely. Admiral Darzo Vabon lay against the cold metal floor of the bridge, his golden armor cracked and scorched. Smoke curled from broken panels, and the smell of burnt circuits filled the air. His vision swam in and out of focus, but he forced himself to move. He rose slowly, blood trickling down his arm. Outside the viewport, Earth glowed like a quiet jewel among the stars. "Status report," he rasped. Tharn stumbled forward, covered in ash. "Admiral, our fleet is destroyed. Only fragments remain. Communications are gone. We cannot fight anymore." Darzo looked around the ruined bridge, seeing faces filled with fear and disbelief. His proud army, once the terror of the stars, was now broken. He felt something deep inside his chest, a strange calm. It wasn't anger. It wasn't shame, it was respect. On Earth, Commander Elena Reyes stood in the control center, surrounded by smoke and broken glass. The weapon they had used, the Sol beam, had worked, but it came at a heavy cost. Entire generators were destroyed and hundreds of lives were lost in the blast. Jonas Lee limped toward her, holding his bleeding arm. "Ma'am, it's over. The enemy flagship is crippled. They're not firing anymore." Elena stared at the sky through the cracked observation window. Tiny pieces of light, burning debris, fell like slow meteors. "Is it really over?" she whispered. Dr. Patel entered, exhaustion in his eyes. The energy core melted during the final discharge. "We can't fire again." Elena nodded weakly. "Then, this is it." But deep in her heart she didn't feel victory, only silence, and an ache she couldn't name. In the quiet dark of the Vraxian, Darzo limped through the corridor, passing bodies of fallen soldiers. The ship's lights flickered weakly. He made his way to the observation chamber, the place where he had watched Earth before the war began. Tharn followed, limping. "Admiral, evacuation pods are ready. We can still retreat to the outer colonies." Darzo stopped and turned. His golden eyes burned faintly through the smoke. "Retreat to what, Tharn? To tell the Council we lost to a world of primitives? To hide behind excuses?" Tharn lowered his head. "What do you wish to do, sir?" Darzo stepped to the window, looking at Earth. "I wish to see them, not as enemies, but as they truly are." He touched the communicator on his wrist, adjusting frequencies. The humans had cracked their signal network, but now he wanted them to listen. At Fort Titan, alarms suddenly blinked on the screen. Jonas frowned. "Incoming signal. From the enemy flagship." Elena straightened instantly. "Put it through." The screen filled with static, and then the image of Admiral Darzo Vabon appeared. His face was bloodied, his armor scorched, yet his eyes still glowed fiercely. "Humans," he began, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "You have done what no species has ever done. You fought the Vrak Empire and survived," Elena said carefully. "If you're here to surrender, we'll accept—" But Darzo raised his hand. "No, not surrender. Understanding." Everyone in the room fell silent. Darzo continued, "You fight with something we cannot comprehend. You fight not for power, not for territory, but for each other. You fight for love, for hope, for a future you may never live to see. That is strength beyond weapons." He paused, his voice softer now. "When I came here, I believed your world was weak. I believed I could crush it in days. But now I see you are not weak, you are alive." Elena's eyes filled with tears. She had lost so many under her command, and hearing those words from her enemy felt like a wound and a gift all at once. Darzo looked down, breathing heavily. "I will return to my people not as a conqueror but as a witness. I will tell them what I saw here. What I felt here. He looked up once more and a faint smile crossed his face. You have changed me, Commander Reyes. Humanity has changed me. Then the signal began to break apart, static crackling across the image. Elena shouted, Darzo! Wait, what are you doing? Darzo's last words came through faintly. Ending this, before someone else begins it again. Then the transmission ended. In orbit, the Vraxian's engines glowed one last time. Darzo stood alone at the controls, his body weak, his vision dim. He set the ship's course toward the empty void, away from Earth, away from war. As he activated the final sequence, the ship's damaged reactor began to hum. It would detonate soon, far from any planet. He whispered softly, almost to himself, Let them live. Let them rise. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life he felt peace. The Vraxian vanished into the darkness, its light fading like a dying star. Moments later, a silent explosion bloomed in the far distance, painting the void with a soft white glow. Back on Earth, Elena watched the explosion from the command center. She didn't say a word. Jonas stood beside her. He could have killed us all. Elena nodded slowly. But he didn't. She looked up at the stars where the light had faded. For a moment, she whispered, we weren't enemies. We were just beings trying to understand each other.